Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Joel Ocasio-Marcano. I'm Interim Deputy Director of the Procurement Division for the CDBG-DR and mitigation programs. In this pre-proposal meeting, we are going to explain the process for the CDBG-DRMIT-RFP-2022-04, a request for proposal for oversight management service, investment portfolio for growth, and disaster recovery and mitigation programs. I would like to introduce the Puerto Rico Department of Housing personnel. Along with me is Juan Rodriguez Hernandez, which is technical specialist for the procurement division, Gabriela Cabrera Soldevila, also technical specialist from the procurement division, Ibelis Martinez Sanchez, executive assistant for infrastructure division, Maria Rodriguez Medina, deputy director of the federal compliance division, and also is Agustin Rodriguez Rosa from our grant manager. Any questions submitted in this meeting will be answered in writing and will be published in an addendum. Any information provided in this meeting does not change the terms and conditions established in the request for proposal instructions. This meeting is being recorded and will be available in our CDBG-DR YouTube channel. All procurement processes shall be conducted in accordance with the terms and conditions established in the procurement manual for the CDBG-DR program to guarantee full and open competition and fair treatment of all persons or entities involved in each procurement process. The procurement manual is available at our webpage and is incorporated by reference and made an integral part of this request for proposal. Now we have a presentation from the infrastructure division for an explanation of the scope of services. I would think.
Good afternoon. We'll be providing an overview of the CDBG-MIT and IPG programs related to these oversight management services RFP. Providing a general overview of CDBG-MIT funding. There's an 8.2 allocation for CDBG-MIT implementation in Puerto Rico, having the Puerto Rico Department of Housing as the grantee. There are specific requirements for this grant, mainly disbursement requirement that establishes that half of the funding allocated for CDBG-MIT shall be disbursed on or before the end of year 6 of the grant, which is on May 2027. For this oversight management RFP, we are covering what's related to the multi-sector projects or programs.
Excuse me, the presentation is not being full screen, and it's not
sorry, let me
changing this. Yeah.
Can you confirm that you can see the
yes, now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, talking about the allocation, $8.2 billion for the CDBG-MIT grant, of which half of it shall be disbursed by year 6, as established by HUD. Under this oversight management request for proposal, we will be requesting services for programs under the multi-sector of of the CDBG-MIT overall program, and that will include approximately $1.4 billion for programs allocated under the Economic Development Investment Portfolio for Growth, for Lifeline Mitigation Program, or the IPG-MIT program, and the Economic Development Investment Portfolio for Growth under Disaster Recovery, that would be IPG-DR. So that has established some general goals for the CDBG funding in Puerto Rico. So we'll be looking to implement high impact projects supported by data, focus on repetitive loss of property and critical infrastructure projects, also building capacity to analyze disaster risks and update the hazard mitigation plans that every jurisdiction in Puerto Rico, including municipalities and the corresponding state agencies, should have up to date. Also, as part of the whole goals, are reducing risk to community lifelines, which include safety and security, communications, food, water and sheltering, transportation, health and medical, hazardous material management, and energy. And also, we should be maximizing the impact of available funds by encouraging leverage and partnerships between private and public entities, along with coordination with other federal entities, which may also provide funding for mitigation activities. We will provide an overview of what's the concept of covered projects under the HUD regulations and the basics of the BCA guidelines applicable for them. So HUD defines a covered project as a project that meets the following three criteria. First, it has to be an infrastructure project. It has to be a project with a total value of 100 million or more, and has to receive an allocation of 50 million or more from CDBG funding, including CDBG-MIT, CDBG-DR, or CDBG. These covered projects will trigger additional requirements from HUD, including the completion of a benefit cost analysis, and actually incorporating that project into the CDBG-MIT action plan, which includes or has to go through a 30-day public comment period, besides all the process of amending the action plan to include that particular project. What is the BCR, or the benefit cost ratio, is what comes from the benefit cost analysis. That is the process of quantifying advantages or benefits and comparing it to the drawbacks, in this case, cost. So a BCR would be the basically a calculation of the quantified benefits divided by the cost of the project. So accrual for a reasonable BCR score will be one that is equal or greater to 1. And this is an exercise that is required for every covered project that meets the already discussed criteria. Moving to the overview of the specific programs, we thought we have the IPG program, that's the one under IPG-DR, and the IPG-MIT program that should be covered by these oversight management services. So establishing similarities and differences between the two programs, the IPG-DR program has $800 million assigned, which is focused on recovery projects that should demonstrate a tie back to hurricanes, in this case, Irma and Maria. It is mainly focused on the economic sector to foster commercial and economic development. And the DR grant timeline is a 6-year grant timeline. When compared to IPG-MIT, IPG-MIT has nearly $629 million assigned. This is focused on mitigation activities as established in the CDBG-MIT action plan. These projects under IPG-MIT should be focused on lifeline infrastructure projects looking to develop this kind of projects from focusing on private investment combined with federal funding. And the MIT grant timeline, as stated before, will be 12 years. The summary of those funding allocations for IPG-DR, we have $800 million, for which $600 million are allocated or separated for application process projects, and $200 million are allocated for public sector critical recovery projects under DR. And for IPG-MIT, we have the whole allocation up to this point for application process projects, or we could call competitive projects. These amounts may already include set aside or allocation that has to be established by regulation for admin, planning, and activity delivery costs. So on the IPG-DR, some example projects could be the ones that create long-term economic development opportunities, also provide essential services and job opportunities, and foster infrastructure projects that facilitate high-impact economic activities. Under IPG-MIT, more focused on infrastructure projects, it could be pursuing communication projects such as communication towers and fiber optic lines, health clinics and facilities, ports, ferry stations, airports, and any other transportation assets. Projects focus on landfill and waste management, projects for fuel containment or management, alternative energy projects, and projects that could target or benefit the food production and supply chain structure of the island. We will move on to provide an overview of the oversight management services required on this RFP. As stated before, please remember that any of the information provided during this presentation in any way alters what the RFP document establishes. So under some general considerations regarding the oversight management services, proposal shall familiarize with the CDBG-MIT action plan and other available documents related to the CDBG-MIT implementation on the island. Proposal should also familiarize with information regarding what national objectives, eligible entities, eligible activities, and what specific federal compliance requirements applicable to all CDBG funding. In terms of award and contracting, services may be awarded to one or more oversight managers. Those oversight managers may be assigned to regions, specific sub-recipients, or a combined arrangement as determined by PRDOH. The contract term shall be 3 years with 2 optional 1-year extensions. Some specific considerations award for this proposal may be canceled at any time by PRDOH and as established on the RFP documents. PRDOH is not obligated to accept proposals, and services are subject to hot funding availability. For your reference, and also included under the RFP documents, again, the program structure for these programs and services, where we have PRDOH as the head and the grantee for funding, as a grant manager in place, and the oversight manager will provide the services described, will be in charge of overseeing subrecipients through a series of tasks that will be described later. Considerations related to staff requirements include that the key staff are staff that must be ready to begin working within 2 weeks after contract execution, as per defining the scope of services and the RFP documents. And project staff are positions to be contracted on an as-needed basis, depending on project implementation and PRDOH necessities. Specified on the scope of services, resources may be required to be working locally in Puerto Rico, and special services staff will be evaluated, approved, and authorized on an as-needed basis, depending on the type of services provided and needed by the PRDOH. Now looking for the oversight manager structure and the personnel required under this RFP, we have as the key staff group, you have a program manager, regulatory compliance officer, deputy program manager, outreach and public relations coordinator, program coordinator, and project manager. Under the project staff group, we have project assistant, construction oversight manager, environmental professional, underwriter, and underwriting analyst. And for special services staff, the RFP is considering a legal compliance officer, subject matter expert, and environmental professional staff positions. Going through an overview of the tasks to be covered as part of the oversight management service and defined under the RFP, we have 4 tasks subdivided in several subtasks. Task 1 is composed of 1-point grant, outreach and program presentations and technical assistance, project application support, project application review, recipient capacity assessment support, benefit cost analysis or PCA support, underwriting, and recipient or loan agreement formalization and the corresponding amendments. Under task 2, we have project plan review, project plan development support, third-party cost estimator support, project reports, recipient procurement process support, project design development support, and environmental process support. Under task 3, we have project implementation and construction and observing. And under task 4, we have project closeout. For additional and specific details of tasks, proposers should refer to the RFP documents. The proposers will present their cost proposal using the price form. You have an extract of the price form for your reference. Considerations related to the price form that the total proposal cost represents the potential total cost for the services requested, with a special services allowance allocation determined by the PRDOH. That will be determined by the PRDOH. And all price forms must be completed. Price forms fields left in blank will be considered as zero cost services. Describing the different parts of the cost form, we have the first column, position column, which describes the staff position type of name. Column A, we describe the quantity of staff resources considered by the PRDOH to provide the services. Column B, maximum hours allowed for each staff resource per month. And from column C forward, information is required from the proposer. On column C, it requires the proposer to include the hourly rate for each staff resource. Column D requires the proposer to include the calculated estimated cost per staff based on the proposed hourly rate included under column B. The monthly subtotal requires the proposer to include the monthly subtotal of all the staff resources combined. Row I requires the proposer to include the resulting calculation from multiplying the monthly subtotal by 36, which represents the quantity of months for the base agreement duration. And the total proposal cost requires the result from row E to be included. The price form has specific and important notes that proposers should consider before submitting their proposal to PRODOH. We'll go over a summary of them. Again, for specific details and information, please refer to the RFP documents. Note number 1 under the price form is related to estimated quantity of resources, which establishes an estimated quantity should not be considered as a cap for staff resources. Note number 2, max hours per month per resource should not be interpreted as a cap on the allowed level of effort per position. Note number 3, rate per hour states that the rate per hour presented should include overhead, profit, royalties, reimbursements, travel, fringe benefits, taxes, and any other fees or administrative costs applicable to services. Note 4, estimated monthly cost per position should not be interpreted as a cap on the allowed billing per position. Note 5, hourly cap, which PRODOH reserves the right to establish an hourly cap for each subtask described in the scope of services. Note 6, maximum monthly cost under column E, amount used for cost estimate evaluation only. Final cost established in contracts may vary after negotiations with proposers. And continue with the price form notes. Note number 7, time frame of 3 years. The 3-year term used for estimate evaluation purposes. Only PRODOH reserves the right to establish a shorter or longer contract term. Note 8, monthly subtotal. An individual position may invoice for an amount greater than that established in the estimated monthly cost per position, but the total invoice for the group may not exceed the monthly subtotal. Note 9, PRODOH reserves the right to award to one or more proposers. And note number 10, on availability and tier services. Services contractor will be available in a tier manner as the funding allocation from HUB is available. Additional services may be added as funds become available. For any inquiries on communication regarding this RFP, you may contact the email on the screen and already included on the RFP information, CDBG-DR, that's procurement at Addenda. We appreciate your participation and attendance to this session. We will move on with the PRODOH.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Now we will discuss the RFP document acquisition. The RFP documents are available for download at the CDBG-DR website as presented on screen. These are the important dates for this RFP. Submission of questions and requests for clarification on or before June 14, 2022 at 4 p.m. Responses to questions and requests for clarifications, June 22, 2022. Proposals due date, electronic submission only, from June 29, 2022 at 9 a.m. up to on or before July 1st, 2022 at 4 p.m. Submission of inquiries and addenda. Responses to all proposers' questions will be answered by addenda and will be posted on the CDBG-DR website. All documents related to this acquisition process, including the addendas issued by the Puerto Rico Department of Housing, are and will be available for download at the CDBG-DR website. All proposers are responsible to monitor the CDBG-DR website for any issue addenda in this RFP. Proposal electronic submission. Proposals will only be accepted electronically. Proposals submitted after the prescribed deadline will not be allowed. The Department of Housing will neither require nor accept physical proposal submissions. If a proposal is submitted on paper and electronically, only the electronic submission will be considered for evaluation. Proposers will receive access to submit proposals after completing the registration process to the CDBG-DR website. Once the scheduled submission period begins, a link will enable access to the registration form. Please complete all required fields in the form. Proposal must be submitted within the closing date and time schedule. Access to upload the proposals will begin 3 business days before the scheduled date and time. Now I will refer to my coworker, Gabriela Cabrera Soldevila.
Thank you, Juan Reynaldo. For this RFP, the evaluation committee will evaluate responses proposals according to the following criteria listed below. Please note that this criteria is in order of importance. First of all, professional qualifications and experience of the proposers to successfully perform the services required in this RFP, as evidenced by the successful implementation of similar programs in large, complex public organizations, preferably state government and municipalities. Second, professional qualifications and specialized experience of the proposed key personnel, as evidenced by relevant experience to the roles proposed. Third, quality of the proposed approach and its relevance to the service described in this RFP, including implementation schedule and understanding of the Department of Housing goals. The capacity of the key personnel and the ability to commit adequate time to effectively perform the services in the role assigned within the required timeframe. And lastly, financial stability of the proposer and its capacity to effectively perform the services. Proposers and first-year subcontractors must be registered in the System for Award Management, better known as SAM, at the time of the proposal submission, or initiate the registration process right after the proposal submission. For more information, please visit the SAM website presented in the screen. There is no fee to create, renew, or update your registration. Awards will only be issued to entities that are clear and not ineligible to contract with the government due to suspension, debarment, or HUD imposed limited denial of participation. Lastly, to talk about federal compliance, I'll leave you with Deputy Director of Federal Compliance, Maria Rodriguez Medina.
Thank you, Gabriela. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be presenting the federal compliance and labor standards requirements for this RFP presentation. I will begin sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the space to present compliance and labor standards requirements. This presentation is prepared in English. However, should anyone need this presentation in Spanish, you can request using the protocols for this RFP. I am representing the Department of Housing Federal Compliance team led by Maria del Carmen Figueroa. Today, we will discuss as part of our agenda an overview of compliance roles and responsibilities. We will also cover some tools that are available online. We will also talk about documenting efforts, taking advantage of training that's made available, and reporting requirements, as well as frequently asked questions. In this presentation, we will be discussing Section 3 training, hiring, and contracting opportunities, minority and women-owned business participation, and fair housing and equal opportunity. Contractors or subrecipients using CDBG-DR or CDBG-MIT funding have certain roles and responsibilities. These include assigning staff who will attend the day-to-day implementation of federal compliance requirements, attending trainings and workshops, using tools and templates, executing the activities, and completing documentation that's required. You can also participate in Department of Housing sponsored technical assistance sessions. You must complete quarterly reporting and comply with the reporting requirements. The procurement package contains language that offers contractors the ability to seek bonus points. Please remember to use the references and the templates that are made available and that we will be discussing in this presentation. Proposers seeking Section 3 bonus points should provide their self-certifications and sufficient evidence for how they qualify as a Section 3 business. The Department of Housing offers a template on their website. Proposers who are seeking MBE or WBE bonus points should provide a copy of their MWBE certification to provide evidence of this status. The certificates provided should show the dates and indicate that they are currently active. The procurement package contains sections that speak to the applicability and the requirements for MWBE. Within those sections, you will find helpful links to online resources that are made available, such as the policy guide. Procurement packages also contain language for Section 3 under 24 CFR 75. Although for this particular procurement, the contractor awarded will not need to comply with Section 3. However, you may find the information useful if you are seeking to prove Section 3 status to earn potential bonus points. Let's talk about Section 3. Section 3 is a federal requirement from the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. This requirement states that we should provide to the greatest extent feasible job training, employment, contracting, and other economic opportunities generated by this HUD financial assistance to be directed to low and very low-income persons and businesses. The Department of Housing makes available a Section 3 policy guide on their website, both in English and in Spanish. Contractors must read and implement activities as applicable and necessary. They also are responsible for their subcontractors assuring that benchmarks are met. For Section 3 projects, 24 CFR 75 has established the following benchmarks. 25% of the total labor hours for a project should be work hours of Section 3 workers. And from that 25%, 5% of the total labor hours should be work hours of targeted Section 3 workers. Let's talk about the definition of a Section 3 business. A Section 3 business refers to a business concern meeting at least one of the following criteria, which is documented within the last 6 months. The business is at least 51% owned and controlled by low or very low-income persons. It could also be a business that has at least 51% ownership and controlled by a public housing resident or residents who currently live in Section 8 assisted housing. It could also be a business that has over 75% of the labor hours performed for that business over the prior 3-month period by Section 3 workers. In this slide, we're going to look at the definition of a Section 3 worker. A Section 3 worker can be any worker who fits or, when hired within the last 5 years, fit at least one of the following categories. The worker's income for the previous or annualized calendar year is below the income limit established by HUD. It could also be a worker who is employed by a Section 3 business concern. Or the worker is a youth build participant. Now let's talk about what a targeted Section 3 worker is. A Section 3 targeted worker for community development financial assistance projects is a person who is employed by a Section 3 business. It could also be a person who currently fits or when hired fit at least one of the following categories as documented within the past 5 years. Someone living within the service area or the neighborhood of the project as defined in 24 CFR 75.5 or a youth build participant. The neighborhood or service area for a targeted Section 3 worker is that in which you can find at least 5,000 persons within a 1-mile radius of the project. If there are less than 5,000 persons within that 1-mile radius, you can expand that radius until you have 5,000 persons around the Section 3 covered project site. Each year, HUD releases new income limits. These income limits typically come out around April. The latest income limits for 2022 are made available on the slide. The Department of Housing has created various forms for helping maintain compliance. There is a Section 3 plan that can be used by contractors or subrecipients. There are also Section 3 self-certification forms. And finally, there is a form to help you document your efforts. Let's take a closer look at your Section 3 plan. This document helps you identify new hiring needs, subcontracting needs. It helps you plan your outreach efforts and assists your coordinators in identifying the day-to-day activities. It helps you define compliant procedures, and it helps you understand your reporting requirements. You can use the link on the slide to visit the website and download a Section 3 plan template. In this slide, we want to focus on the Section 3 self-certification forms. These useful tools help you uncover if workers or subcontracting businesses meet the income thresholds required. HUD offers also a business registry. This registry allows you to register yourself as a Section 3 business. The registry also has a tool that helps serve folks looking for Section 3 business databases. We will now turn our attention to minority and women-owned business compliance. There are various regulations that call for the inclusion of minorities and women business enterprises. 2 CFR 200.321, as well as Executive Orders 11625, 12138, and 12432 establish the participation of MWBE firms, which seek to ensure that when possible, contracts and other economic opportunities funded in whole or in part with federal housing and community development assistance are directed to minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. The Department of Housing has established an MWBE policy guide. This is available on the website in both English and Spanish. You can access those documents using the link on the slide. Let's look at what a minority business enterprise is. An MBE is defined as a business which is at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled on a daily basis by one or more American citizens of the following ethnic minority and/or gender and/or military veteran classifications: African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, Native American, Hasidic Jew, persons with disabilities, and other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. Women Business Enterprises, or WBEs, are businesses that are at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women. The owners must be U.S. citizens or legal resident aliens, whose business formation and principal place of business are here in the U.S. or its territories, and whose management and daily operation is controlled by women. The MWBE Policy Guide will identify that there are goals which apply to professional services, purchasing supplies, and construction contracting. There is a total of 20% minimum participation goal. This 20% is comprised of 10% for women-owned businesses and 10% for minority-owned businesses. Contractors are expected to perform good faith efforts for contracting, subcontracting, and purchasing opportunities of $10,000 or more during the life of the contract. The Department of Housing has also created various forms for helping maintain compliance with MWBE. One of those is the MWBE Utilization Plan. This document template allows contractors or subrecipients to identify how they plan on being in compliance with these contracting goals. There is also a waiver form. This document allows contractors or subrecipients to identify if they meet the requirements to waive their goals for MWBE. Let's look at the MWBE Utilization Plan. This tool helps you compile data for your subcontracting. It helps you identify what needs you may have. It helps hold discussions on creating supplier and contractor listings, and it provides awareness of meeting the goal for the contract and tracking. You can use the link on the slide to go to the website and download the plan template. Let's review how you should complete your MWBE Utilization Plan. The Department of Housing Utilization Plan template can be used throughout the life cycle of your contract. Completing the plan is pretty easy. You should read the general instructions in row 3 and complete sections A, B, and F from the document. Complete the information requested in the yellow cells. When we talk about certified minority or women-owned businesses, we are referring to those who have filed applications with federal entities such as SBA and others that you see here on the slide. Businesses who are certified can provide proof of completing an application process to be officially recognized as a certified minority or women-owned business. If you are registered as an MWBE, you should provide your valid certificate or other evidence in response to this RFP. In this section, we will be discussing how to complete your efforts and quarterly reporting. In order for you to report your efforts, the Department of Housing provides a tool. This tool helps you document and identify how often you are seeking interactions with Section 3 businesses and MWBE businesses. The quarterly reporting form allows for you to share and report your data with the Department of Housing. This allows the agency to fulfill oversight responsibilities and monitor the progress throughout the year. The Department of Housing's quarterly reporting form allows for the user to capture multiple compliance areas all in one Excel form. Section 3 data is collected. MWBE data is collected as well. FHEO information is also documented within the report. And finally, for those who have construction projects, there is a report for Davis-Bacon Unfound Workers Efforts Reporting. Awarded contractors will be responsible for reporting 4 times a year, on April 5th, July 5th, October 5th, and January 5th. This ensures that you are meeting benchmarks and documenting your efforts. The quarterly reporting template is also available on the Department of Housing website. Let's briefly discuss FHEO. Your RFP package will also contain a model contract which outlines fair housing and equal opportunity areas of compliance. Contractors are responsible for ensuring compliance with federal civil rights and fair housing through their contractors, subcontractors, and so forth, ensuring that all necessary efforts are being made. The Fair Housing Act and Sections 109 and 504 prohibit discrimination against the following protected classes of people: race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, familial status, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. The Fair Housing Act is part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There are many executive orders, laws, and statutes that govern the non-discrimination of protected classes to ensure equal opportunity for individuals in accessing federally funded programs. Equal opportunity is afforded to protected classes through a number of these federal laws and executive orders. The Department of Housing has published policy documents attending FHEO as well as Language Access Plan. These policies must be implemented by contractors and subrecipients. They are publicly available online in both English and Spanish. You are encouraged to click on the links and access the resources available. As a recipient of HUD financial assistance, the Department of Housing must ensure that all programs affirmatively further access to fair housing and that the programs provide equal opportunity for participation and employment. Reasonable accommodations are changes made to policies, practices, services, and structures, or modifications to afford equal opportunity to individuals with disabilities. The costs associated with providing reasonable accommodations and modifications are to be incurred by programs receiving federal funding. HUD contemplates these additional costs as necessary to ensure that the programs and activities it funds do not discriminate against people with disabilities. The slide contains a link for you to access the reasonable accommodation page on the Department of Housing website. Limited English proficiency refers to a person's limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English. Due to Puerto Rico's high Spanish-speaking population, all entities and contractors using the CDBG-DR funding must seek to ensure that both a person's limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English or Spanish will not place them at a disadvantage in the participation of programs.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
It stopped playing, right?
yes, it's top line.
Okay, I don't know what happened, but I can finish the slides myself. So lastly, we'll be discussing the Davis-Bacon and related acts. The PRDOH has published the Davis-Bacon policy and has made it available in English and Spanish. PRDOH, its subrecipients and contractors must implement and comply with this policy. Most construction projects funded with CDBG-DR and CDBG-MIT funds must comply with DBRA requirements to ensure that laborers and mechanics are paid prevailing wages, including overtime wages, for the work performed on CDBG-DR and CDBG-MIT funded projects. Contractors awarded contracts funded with these funds are responsible for understanding and complying with DBRA requirements. DBRA is comprised of the following acts: the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, the 29 CFR Section 5 from the Department of Labor, the Davis-Bacon Act, also known as DBA, of 1931 as amended, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 as amended, and what is known as QASA, the Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act, and also the Copeland Anti-Kickback Act of 1934. This is what we know as DBRA. It's Davis-Bacon and its related acts. This is a brief summary of what Davis-Bacon Act requires. It requires the payment of prevailing wages as determined by the DOL. It provides a fair opportunity to compete in building programs funded by federal funds. And it prevents contractors from bidding below an area's prevailing wages. It generally applies to federally funded or assisted projects valued at more than $2,000. It also applies for the following types of work on public buildings or public works. It includes construction, alteration, and repair, and painting and decorating. The act known as QASA states that workers shall not work more than 40 hours per week unless they get overtime. And also the projects must comply with safety standards. On the other hand, the Copeland Anti-Kickback Act requires payment of wages at once a week and is only permissive. It only permits payroll deductions that are allowed legally. The FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, sets the federal minimum wage and additional overtime requirements. Who implements the DBRA? The project team, the procurement team, the legal team, the compliance team, and any contractors and subcontractors on the CDBG-DR funded projects. So everybody basically implements DBRA. The projects where DBRA applies, you can see them in the procurement part of the project, where you need to have your wage determination that is stated by DOL. Also during the pre-bid meeting, which is what we are doing right now, the contract signing, you need to be sure that the federal wage and local wage determination is included, as well as the HUD form number 4010 or 4010. Also on the pre-construction meeting, where technical assistance to contractors and their subcontractors is provided. On the on-site interviews, once construction starts, you need to be sure to use HUD form 11 to conduct on-site interviews to verify workers on the site are being paid accordingly. You need to also review certified payrolls and flag underpayments, missing overtime pay. PRDOH offers checklists for this review. We have all that information also available through federal compliance and sub-recipient management. You also apply DBRA on the notification to the prime contractor when you notify in writing of any deficiencies that must be remedied, at closeout also at the end of the project, and at the end on record reporting and record keeping. You need to complete your quarterly reporting and biannual reporting as applicable. You need to maintain records for 6 years after the close of the project. Now, regarding key phases in implementation for DBRA, it's important that you incorporate the wage determination, the labor standards provisions, and the HUD form 4010 into your bid documents. You need to hold a pre-bid meeting to provide technical assistance to DBRA and prior to awarding the contract. You need to incorporate prevailing and federal wage determination, HUD form 4010, and contract labor law language. You also need to hold a pre-construction meeting to provide technical assistance to your contractors on DBRA or DBRA. Once construction begins, you need to conduct job site visits and employee interviews using HUD form 10. HUD form 11. Also, you need to carefully review weekly certified payroll reports and supporting documentation for the duration of the project. You need to issue due diligence notifications to the prime contractor describing the deficiencies to be remedied. You need to identify and correct all deficiencies before billing PRDOH or CDBG-DR admit a reimbursement. You need to issue a letter of authorization from DBRA to the prime contractor prior to project closure. You must also retain records for 6 years in accordance with the Housing Records Retention Policy. Here you have some resources, some web pages where you can see and study WASA and FLSA applicability when when Davis-Bacon doesn't apply. There's also the contractor's guide for CDBG-DR program. You can see it in our webpage. It's called the Contractor's Guide to Prevailing Wage Requirements. Regarding HUD 4010 form, you need to know that PRDOH and its recipients are responsible for HUD's overall compliance with the federal prevailing wage requirements applicable to HUD-funded projects. Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 requires the payment of local prevailing wage rates, and these are determined by the U.S. Department of Labor, as we have mentioned before. These requirements apply regardless of whether the contract was acquired through the seal bid, small purchase. Sorry, about this. Okay. You need to locate DBRA posters on your job sites. These are available in multiple languages, including English and Spanish. Here you have a few examples of these. Regarding contractor penalties and consequences for non-compliance, we have that contractors that are found to be in violation of the DBRA may have contract payments withheld in sufficient amounts to satisfy unpaid wages and liquidated damages that resulted from said violations. Contractors may be subject to debarment from future contracts for up to 3 years. You may also have grounds to have their contract terminated in extreme cases. They may be subject to HUD sanctions and denied participation in other HUD programs, and may be subject to civil or criminal prosecution. You can visit the PRDOH DBRA webpage, and you can click on the boxes to access our resources. There you have the DBRA policy guide, subrecipient Davis-Bacon handbook, contractor's guide, Davis-Bacon forms, and frequently asked questions, among others.
Let's briefly discuss some common, frequently asked questions. Can a business be both Section 3 and MWBE? The answer is yes. A business or a contractor can be both because these compliance areas are actually separate. Section 3 identifies the level of incomes to determine the status. MWBE uses race and gender information to qualify a business. If I am not planning on subcontracting, do I still need to complete documents? The answer is yes. You should still submit your MWBE utilization plan, the documentation of efforts template, and your quarterly reports. If Section 3 doesn't apply to my contract, do I still have to complete the quarterly report? The answer is yes. You will have to complete the MWBE portion of the report and the portion of the report that attends to FHEO. If I'm either an MBE or WBE, do I fulfill the total goals? You may have safe harbor for one of the goals for MWBE participation of 10%, but you will still have an additional 10% goal to show good faith efforts for any subcontracting or purchasing you perform with the CDBG-DR and CDBG-MIT funding. What happens if I don't fulfill the goals before the end of my contract? All awarded contractors should perform and document their efforts. The Department of Housing has developed templates discussed in this presentation that help you complete the exercise. You can submit a waiver before the end of your contract for approval. This waiver request should be submitted with the efforts and justification as appropriate. Thank you for attending today's training. We hope you found the material helpful. Please remember to direct all your questions through the established protocols for this procurement. Thank you to the procurement team for allowing us to present this material. I will stop sharing the presentation so you can continue with the session. Procurement team, I'm handing over the presentation to you now.
I apologize for the little mishap, but I think all the information is there. Thank you. Thank you, Joy.
Oh, thank you. We have reached the end of the meeting. Again, thank you to everyone who was participating. Please remember, check the due dates on our documents. Download the documents in our CDBG-DR webpage. And we will, as I said earlier, we will publish this meeting on our YouTube channel for future reference. Have a good the rest of the day, everyone, and thank you.